into session, I have a small survey to be done. Who all are implementing Scrum? Please raise your hand. You know that how to raise hand in this tool, right? If not, yes, Rahul raised hand, Min chat, whoever is implementing Kanban. So I'm going to see chat. So today we are going to differentiate between two frameworks or methods or methodology, whatever you call it. And what are the typical misunderstandings? We're going to also discuss about whether Scrum is absolutely replaceable by Kanban, or can Kanban be absolutely replaced by Scrum? Or, as Lotfi was asking, can we have a marriage of both the frameworks together and it would give the best of both worlds? So let's discuss it. Okay. So topic is Scrum or Kanban or both. Today, I'm your facilitator. So we are going to have this discussion. It's not just one-way communication, but we'll have a lot of discussion, like Lotfi was asking a question. So in some cases, I would get back to you and ask a certain question, and I would also conduct certain surveys, so we get a lot of inputs from this particular session and get a gist of it across the world, how it is being implemented. Yeah. So I need not go into all the details. So last time you were asking about my number and contact details. So I have hit here on this page here. Just FYI, I'm founder for Agile Waters Consulting Company. We have one of the biggest Agile practitioners group of India. It's a free community established in multiple countries, including India, UK, and many more. We also have an NGO called Green Incubator Foundation. So yeah, apart from that, I have consulted so many companies in my 22 years of career. I'm still doing it with various companies that are mentioned here. My areas of expertise, you should know that when we are discussing this topic here, so I am a certified trainer for Kanban, and I have trained across the world. I have done about 4 different companies, the transformation from zero to Kanban, and or multiple teams and Kanban transformations, and those are really working well. I had a lot of transformations in those companies. So when I say enterprise coach or trainer, this is for Kanban as well as Scrum. Yeah, apart from that, I do life coaching, career guidance for many people, DevOps, and so many things. Hobbies, the best hobby is learning about the brain plasticity, how brain changes, even at certain age, how you can change your behavior. So scientific studies, psychologically, I'm studying that, and I'm experimenting on myself. How do we change? I'm a marathoner, I already told that about. Yeah, so let's go to main topic here. What we will discuss today. So what is Scrum and what is Kanban? What is the origin of Scrum as well as Kanban? So you will get to know that where it was intended to be used. What is the application? As Lotfi was asking, how do we apply it? And where do we do marriage? In what cases? Comparison. And then there are certifications. People generally ask me about the certification. So that's why I added that slide also today about certifications. So very small number of slides, but we will have a lot of discussions today. Okay, so the first question, anybody can speak out. Where do we implement Scrum? Anybody in this session, please answer. You can unmute and tell me or tell us.
Scrum, I'm Vasant here. Scrum,
yes,
Scrum, Kanban, we start with Kanban. Kanban is like kind of a thing when you have pile of work, you want to see the progress, systematic way. How many are open, how many are in progress, how many are closed. It's nothing to do with Scrum, it's nothing to do with anything. It can be a mechanical industry, it's a process industry, it can be any industry where you have pile of work and to see the closure of them. So open, in progress, closure. So Kanban can be applied anywhere. While coming to the Scrum, I am not sure whether it's applicable for many industries, but especially in software, it's very popular, where you have a set of organized, self-organized team who decide the scope, who decide the ways of working, and who decide the end delivery. So I see this is a difference. It's just my opinion.
Awesome, very good. I think not absolute words, but you nailed it. You also showed us or told us that Kanban has wide variety of implementation across various platforms. However, you also limited where to implement Scrum. So Kanban's implementations are way bigger than Scrum's implementations. So let's see. Thank you so much for that. Anybody else, or
Yeah,
you can
this
go
is
on?
Krishna. I believe Scrum can be applied not only for complex applications, for even for the smallest applications what we're designing, and not only in software. I think Scrum can be applied anywhere if we follow the exact practices. Yeah, that is my opinion.
Very good. Thank you so much for that. So let us understand. Do you all know about Kennefin Framework that I have shown here on the right side of the screen? If not, this is very famous, and you can just Google it and you'll get lots of literature and videos on Kennefin Framework. So let's understand in very simplest way. In this world, situation can be of different types. So if I see here, there are 5 different situations given to you. The one on the right side bottom is obvious. The situation is obvious. I'm going to give you certain examples about. Um, if you are playing this game, have you played this game? In kids generally played that. I have played in my when I was a kid. You draw 4 lines, and then one kid crosses or one kid puts a 0, and then you have to make one line. Whoever makes the complete line wins. Have you played that game? Anybody? This one I'm saying. Here's my cursor.
Yep.
Yes. So do you know what to do next in this problem? If your opponent is putting 2 dots here, okay, and you have put 1 cross here, you know how to stop him or her by putting a cross here. Okay, so what is this problem? This is an obvious problem, very, very simple problem. What to do in such cases? When the problem is very obvious and the solution is very obvious, in that case, you need to sense what you're doing. Since your opponent is putting 2 dots here, it means he or she is in a position to have a complete line or a straight line. The moment he or she makes it, will win. So now you sense it. Okay, categorize it. How can he or she make, if you put a dot here or something like that, how can you stop it? There might be multiple, 2 to 3 different ways. So you will categorize it, and then you will respond it. What is the response? You will put a cross to stop him or her, so that he or she couldn't make an absolute straight line. So there's a chance for you to win. Simple, obvious problem. What are the other simple problems? Simple problems may be making tea that you are comfortable with. That's an obvious simple problem. That sequence, sugar, putting tea powder, water, and heating it. Simple problem. Now there are some complicated problems. On the right side top, if you are playing chess, if you know what is there on the chess board when you play, the opponent is also playing some of his or her moves which are there on the table, and you can also sense. So what you're going to do from the table, whatever pieces are there, you can actually sense it. How to solve it? Sense it, then analyze it. What is he or she going to do next? What was my move? Okay, based on that, if I do this, what is the counter position that the other player would put? Will it put me in a different difficult situation? Based on that, you will come to know about there are multiple different ways you can actually play. So that's a complicated scenario. Okay, so in that sense, analyze and respond. There are quite a few good practices. If you read about certain on Google, there are multiple people, mostly some Russians or Vishwanathan Anand in India. They have already mentioned certain moves. So the moment a person plays, you have certain move. In a real life example, what happens when you are on the road and all of a sudden car stops? So what will you think? Car stops. It means let me check fuel. So fuel indicator is 0. Then in that case, what will you do? You'll just go to the fuel petrol pump or gasoline pump and you'll just fill it. Simple problem. But car stopped and you know that there is fuel. You do not know what's the reason. And then there is smoke coming out of your car bonnet. What will you do? Simple problem. You'll just go open the bonnet and you'll see inside it and you don't know what to do next. What will you do in that case? Because there are so many parts there. Is it a rocket science? Fixing engine, is it a rocket science? No. This science is already developed. All these solutions are already built in, already available, standard solutions. However, there are so many components, you just do not know how to solve it or where to find the problem. In such cases, you will call a mechanic. That is a complicated problem. Problem solution is there, but you do not know how to solve it, or which one is the step to take it. Complicated. There are certain complex problems. What are those complex problems? Complex problems, you do not know solutions. Even if there was a solution in this world, it has to be applied in multiple ways or different ways. There are thousands of different ways you can implement, typically software development. When you are creating a software, a feature has to be developed. And there are so many languages, there are so many technologies, there are so many ways you can write your functions and procedures. And there are certain restrictions on it. How do you do it? You cannot implement the complete software in day one. So in that case, what you do one thing which is unknown and try to explore it. Once you get more and more knowledge, you go and try to implement in another one. Next one. So it is an empirical process. What is empirical process? You can only know the absolute details when you try and experiment it. By doing only, you get to know what is to be done next. You cannot have absolute knowledge at the start of the project. That is called as complex scenario. In that case, what do? You do probe. You take the first problem, probe it. While probing, you get a lot of inputs. When you create a software, you get a lot of inputs, how it works. Then sense it, how it will actually work. After sensing it, then you get the right response. I think this would be right response, and then respond to it. However, after responding, you will have to showcase to your customers, because customer might give you so many inputs, and then they might say that, oh no, this is not the way you have implemented it. So this is complex domain. For an example, today's COVID situation, nobody knew what would be the right vaccine. What is the right way to make a vaccine? Because always was make an iteration, make a vaccine solution, and then inject it where actually the coronavirus is there. How it reacts. Even if it reacts well, you still can't be sure, because the reaction on the human body also has to be tested. It has to have certain time, and then only feedback comes, then you can say that, oh yes, it's working. Many times you will say that, hey, oh, it's not working. So that's a feedback. In such a case, Scrum can be implemented. And then there is a scenario called chaos. Chaos, nothing is clear, Many times, it behaves absolutely randomly. Right in the beginning, when COVID started in 2020 March, especially across the world, it was a chaotic situation. How do you respond to it? How do you respond to it? The only solution to respond is act, run away from the problem. So that's how you run away, and then see problem from afar. If you are still alive, problem from far, and then respond to it according to the situation. So what you will do in chaos situation, you would like to come somewhere near obvious or complicated or complex scenarios. Or what is disorder? It might be any of the sense, but there is no order to it. So out of all these scenarios, complex scenario best suits for Scrum. Why? Because it has to be an empirical scenario. You take one by one problem, solve it, get the feedback, and try to solve the next one. And that's how you get to learn so many things. For that, the iterative and incremental scenario is the best scenario. Okay, here are 4 different solutions from the methodology or methods perspective. On the left side down is waterfall. You must mostly be knowing about it. Waterfall was typically from manufacturing industry or production industry. So like you have to create a big product. You take about a year or 6 months or something like that, and then sometimes recreate it. On the right side, if you see, this is a typical, if you have known about Prince2 and all, then this is called as incremental scenario. You do not iterate, but incremental you do it. However, on the left side top, this spiral design thing, wherein one big problem, spiral, you just realization, reflection, all you do iteratively, but it's not incremental. You do not give value every duration or every small duration to customer. But if you see the mix of both, that is the Prince2 and spiral design, on the right side top, you will see that iterative and incremental. What is iterative and incremental? About everything you do iteration. Every iteration you give a small increment to customer. That is called as iterative and incremental. So wherever there is a complex scenario, okay, and you can implement iterative and incremental delivery. For an example, if your customer is a complex scenario, your customer is ready to collaborate with you. If you have certain issues and he or she is ready to talk to you anytime, and he or she is available to take your delivery, go into the demonstration sessions, absolutely fine. Then you are ready for the Scrum implementation. Iterative, incremental, but collaboration with the customer is must, ongoing. Okay, and if it's the complex situation, that will give you the best solution. Any question? We are done with basic Scrum here. Okay, so very good. We said that where to implement Scrum, whenever there is a complex scenario, okay, complex problem statement, wherever unknowns are more than knowns, and unknowns can be discovered only when you try to implement something and showcase to customer or demonstrate it to people who are going to use it. In that case only, Scrum is really beneficial. But can you implement Scrum everywhere? Yeah, why not? You can implement Scrum anywhere, but the benefits that you get out of it might be very less. Scrum suggests from Scrum Guide that we discussed in last 3 weeks, the sprint, which is the smallest duration wherein you can deliver to customer, is typically 1 month or less. Okay, in such cases, whenever you are going to deliver iteratively, in that case, Scrum is really good. Now let's come to Kanban. Okay, what is Kanban? I think someone was telling, I'm sorry, I forgot the name. Kanban can be implemented everywhere or anywhere. I would like to limit it. Where to implement Kanban? Kanban is to be implemented wherever there is a knowledge discovery. In the sense, if you do certain step and you get some knowledge out of it, okay, and that knowledge, or maybe the person who's implementing it, his or her knowledge will impact the outcome of the solution. In that case, Kanban is applicable. Where it can happen, it can actually happen when you're doing studies. You have multiple subjects, chemistry, physics, biology, mathematics, and so many things. There's so many chapters to read from and then apply for the exam. Can you implement Kanban? Yes, that's a knowledge discovery. If you are managing your own house, there are so many things that needs to be done and you have to choose from. You have to choose from which one to do first, from the value basis or from the cost basis or from risk basis. You have to choose from it. Multiple things you have to choose from. In that case, which one to pull, which one to take first is the problem to be solved. In such a cases, Kanban helps because that's also a knowledge discovery. You will also gain knowledge from it. Now, what you do when I say pull, I will tell you one small story about how Kanban started. This is from David Anderson's book and David Anderson's framework when he discusses about it. Uh, there's a garden in Imperial Garden that's still there in Japan. Uh, the gardener of this particular garden, he liked his garden, the way he managed that garden. He was in love with it. And what used to happen, generally on Sundays, a lot of people used to come to this garden and flock around. And because the capacity is less, utilization is more, they used to spill over a lot of dust and garbage. And because of this, they can't see people what they are doing, and they cannot control people. So what used to happen, people used to pluck flowers and cut trees and something like that. So he was worried. What he said, I need to have certain solution. So what he thought about, something, this particular garden has certain capacity. What is the capacity? Maybe we can manage 100 people at one time. Oh, so I know now my capacity. How do I solve it? How do I solve this problem? So I said, how can I control people? Only according to that capacity, people will utilize this garden. So what they made, only one entry there, he put 100 tickets. So while people has to come inside, they have to take that ticket and then only come in. While going out, they have to submit it at the counter and then go back. The moment 100 tickets are done, there's no more entry. So what happened because of this? People felt earlier, people were complaining about this. What will happen? People will be not happy because they would not be able to use the garden. Only 100 people would be able to use the garden. What happened? Japan people are really good. So inside 100 people are done. Now what used to happen? People inside who are actually playing and enjoying that garden used to see outside, and they say, "Oh, people are waiting for us. People are waiting for us. Unless until we go out, what will happen? People will not be able to enter." So what happened? People started becoming more responsible and people started going out. So now what he saw, because of putting that capacity, what started happening, earlier people used to stay in the garden, say roughly 4 hours or 5 hours, each person. Now what started happening? People started staying in the garden for very less time. The time came from maybe 4 hours to 2 hours or 1 hour kind of. So this was mentioned as the cycle time. Anything to be done, how much time it takes in the system while it goes out. So this was the time spent by an individual drastically reduced. And hence the quality of the garden was maintained and the gardener was happy. And this is how the origin of Kanban is known to history. So what was there? The capacity of the tasks that needs to be done at any point of time, that has to be mentioned. So if you see on the screen, if you see here from backlog, you see to do, that is the capacity. If you see in red, capacity of do. What does that system tells you? The system tells you cannot take more than 2 tickets here. Okay. Now you go to development. There is a 3 written in circle there. What is that? That's the capacity. What it tells you, the maximum capacity you can utilize is 3. So maximum number of tickets you can have there is 3. Similarly in testing too. What do we call it? In Kanban system, what do we call it? If you make a board like that, okay, if no answer, this is called as WIP limit, work in progress limit. You know that from garden example, the moment he defined and enforced the capacity, what started happening? The cycle time or the people staying in that garden reduced. Also, the quality of the garden was maintained. So what started happening? The flow started happening. People coming in and people going out, the flow increased. It was not a stable system. The flow was good, moving system. Because of this, what happened? Everybody was happy. We're using that garden, as well as the cycle time reduced. Everybody was happy and we were actually going out. So they were not really wasting time. capacity was maintained. So similarly, what happens? What is a Kanban system? Kanban can be implemented everywhere. It is a visualization framework. Visualization framework minded. So what do we do in visualization framework? Whatever sequence of activities that we do, we have to put it in a flow. Okay, sequential flow. See here, a ticket comes to backlog or a requirement comes to backlog, then we put it into to-do, then it goes to development, then it goes to testing, then it goes to deployment, and then the ticket is done. So this is a sequence of activities. Okay, if you actually see typically Scrum board, it will have to-do, in progress, and done. No specific development or testing, because in Scrum there's a lot of collaboration required. Things will typically move on testing and development, and hence people say that you should not segregate between the phases. However, in Kanban, according to flow, we put it into phases. Okay, so what here, we made our work visual on the board. Okay, now you can see each day where the work is stuck, where so many stickies are there, whether development has 3 WIP, it is stuck there. If you see, one fine day you come to office and you see testing, there is no ticket. But development, there are 3 tickets. To do, there are 2 tickets. Backlog is full of it. What is this, the knowledge that you get out of it? Can anybody tell? Lotfi? One fine day you come to office, in testing, there's no ticket. Development is full. Today is full. Backlog is full.
I can reshuffle or reswap, since there is more personnel is required at this stage. Then I can do it and then increase the work in progress. I can adjust at any stage. I have, like, cages or keys. I can open the water too much or less. It's up to you, because you have a visual workflow in each stage. You design what to do in each stage.
Exactly. Very good. So now you got to know that the capacity of testing is more, or speed of delivery of testing is more, but the speed of delivery of development is less. In such a cases, as Lotfi said, either you can take a decision to increase the capacity of development, in the sense, not capacity in the sense of tickets, but speed of delivery. Reduce the cycle time from the garden example. How to reduce the cycle time? Maybe have more experienced people in development so that the work is faster. Second way, there might be certain bottlenecks. Find out, resolve those bottlenecks so that work can be faster. So Kanban works on the principle of flow. Things should be flowing faster. Okay, things should be flowing faster. So Kanban can be implemented anywhere, wherever there is a knowledge discovery. It has multiple steps and lots of work. In that case, you just visualize it and make sure the flow is managed. And that's what is all about Kanban. It has matrices and tools we will discuss in a while. Okay, so when I say comparison about Scrum, Kanban, and Scrumban, so on your screen, what are the roles? In Scrum, we have typically 3 roles: product owner, Scrum master, and developers. Up to 2020, it was development team. However, now in 2020 Scrum Guide, it has changed to developers. So there are no more 2 teams. There is only 1 team. Scrum team has 3 roles. Kanban, generally at the team level, do not have any roles. What it says, it works on one principle, philosophy. Your organization has gained a lot of knowledge. Your organization is different than any other organization in this world, because every organization is unique. Every team is unique. Sometimes even every work that you do is unique. Every problem statement is unique. And what Kanban says, we do not mandate you to have any roles. You can actually go ahead with your organization state. So no specific role. However, you have to map 2 people or the roles. One is anybody can be mapped to a supply manager, in the sense the person who is supplying to the customer. supplying to the customer or giving a resultant or outcome. Maybe you can call your product owner as a supply manager. And then there is a demand manager. Who's a demand manager? Who's on the customer side, giving you requirements. Okay, can be a demand manager. So, from the garden example, Kanban is all about balancing supply and demand. Supply and demand, managing that is Kanban. Now, where to implement both? Or what is the roles when we have Scrumban? It's your choice. As Lotfi asked, if you are implementing Scrum, you want to implement Kanban in it, so be it. You can have all 3 Scrum roles and then Kanban roles, or maybe only Scrum roles would do. You can just map who is your supply manager. Maybe you can say that maybe anybody from the development team you can call supply manager and product owner as demand manager. But if you do that, that would be against the Scrum rules, because Scrum is one team. You cannot distribute cannot have a thin line between them that one is supplier and one is this thing. In that case, you would like to give that demand manager somebody on the customer or the user side. That's the combination. Cadence, in the sense the iterations. If you see, what is the cadence? Sprint is of typically 1 month or less. But Kanban, it's continuous. In the sense, a work is done, you take another one. If you have capacity, take another one. Like garden example. The moment 2 people goes out of the garden, what happens? You can allow 2 people coming in. Similarly, in Kanban, you can take new 2 tickets if there's a capacity to manage. So simple as that. However, in Kanban, there is a cadence. At the start only, you can allocate entry, or at the end, it goes out. So absolute batch of people either come. So if you want to implement Scrum there in that Imperial Garden, what will happen? The gardener will say, every 7 o'clock in the morning, the first batch comes in of 100 people. Okay. And then in between 7 to 8, there is no exit or no entry. Okay. And then exactly at 8 o'clock or 5 to 8, he says, you go out now. And then exactly at 8 o'clock, new people coming in. So that's a cadence. However, Kanban says, no, you can just freely go in, go out. That's a difference. Key metrics. You all know mostly we're implementing Scrum. Velocity. How many number of items are done in a given unit of time, or how much worth of work or points of work is done per unit of time. Maybe you can call it a per unit of time is velocity. The sprint. Per sprint, how many story points done? Per sprint, how many function points done? Per sprint, how many any unit of the work done can be called as velocity. But in Kanban or the matrices, as I told you in the garden example, cycle time, how much time the person is staying in the system, that is called a cycle time. The main agenda is to reduce the cycle time, day by day, month by month. That's the improvement there. WIP limit, you already know that. What is the limit in the particular column or particular phase or in the total project? What is throughput? Throughput is output. In a given duration, what is the total output? You can sometimes compare it to velocity, but not always. What about Scrumban? It's a mix of both. If you are implementing Scrum as well as Kanban. Now I would come to Lotfi, your question. Where to implement Scrum and Kanban both? What is the best about Scrum? Scrum gives you best output if in case it's a complex scenario and your people need to discuss a lot, have a lot of collaboration, and then you will come out with certain solution. And at the end, you will deliver it to the customer. But you also have a scenario wherein you are fixing defects coming from the field. Now you cannot tell your customers that, hey, wait, our sprint is going on. What customer sometimes will say, oh, okay, your sprint is going on, this defect is really critical. Then it's better that I would like to move on to another vendor. That may happen. And that's why must have seen lot of scrums are typically going for a toss because that's not really implemented in a good scenario and they do not have a solution. In such a cases, what we are doing nowadays in industries, we also implement scrum only for the requirements or the fresh requirements which can stop delivery or change up to the end of the sprint, but some capacity out of the 100% capacity, what you say is 60% for Scrum, 40% or 20% for Kanban. Wherein Kanban, you say you accept just 60% requirement for Scrum or a new requirement, and Kanban bandwidth you generally keep open. So whenever a defect comes in or a maintenance ticket comes in, or whenever enhancement you need to do, quick enhancement, then in that case 40% capacity is actually reserved for that. So in that case, you can have a Scrum board as well as a Kanban board. So that's a mixture of it. Okay, that's how you use Kanban or Scrumban, mix of both. Now, release cycle. What is a release cycle in Scrum? Typically, every sprint you release to customer, we call it as potentially releasable software or potentially releasable increment. If you see 2020 Scrum Guide has come out with the new version, which is no more limited to only software. We are saying now different products or services. So what is at every sprint we have a release, but also Scrum Guide now says you can also do intermediate release. So you see an amalgamation of Scrum and Kanban actually happening in Scrum Guide. So often, release often, which was never stopped earlier, but it is explicitly mentioned that release often. But what is Kanban? Every requirement, once it is done, you can just release it. Yeah. So release in Scrum is every sprint. Release in Kanban is continuous. Now there's a question I see here from Lockfeed. Do we have a release planning? Do we have a release planning in Scrum?
Yes, we do have. I'm sorry. I use in my company, Vijay, I decided to take both S-Book and the Scrum Guide, and I took the best out of both of them. In the Scrum Guide, there is no release planning. It's focused only on team level and user story and this stuff. What I loved about S-Book, although it looks like PMBOK from PMI, the waterfall, I love the way that he has this release planning stage, you know, where how to create a project schedule, where I find it very, very useful. This is why I asked you if I do release planning, without regard I follow what I believe in, S-Book or Scrum Guide. The question I was asking, is there a release planning in Kanban, Scrum Ban, or I call it Kanban? I'm not tied into terminologies now. I need to know, can I do it or not? Where I can see in this quarter, I'll do this X number of features. But the question to you now is, it is a pull system Kanban. I cannot predict what is going to come to the backlog. This is the things I need to understand from you. I cannot predict what is going to come. How, if you cannot predict what is going to come, how come you can do planning what you will do and you don't know what's going to come? And this is, and also release planning is based on features, not user stories. So how can the card system in Kanban, how can I classify it? Should it be a feature or should it be a user story? I'm sorry, I took a long time.
But very good question. Thank you so much. And you also clarified your situation. So,
Vijay, just I want to share my experience. This is Ravi Shekhar this side. Okay. Usually I have an experience of a Scrum as well as the Kanban. Okay. And particularly Kanban, we used to, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, yes. So Kanban, particularly we implemented for the production support where we require a continuous release of whatever thing. Okay. It is a flow-based system. We cannot, there is no iterative or the frequency. Whatever the ticket or the support ticket or anything is coming up, it has to be implemented. Whereas the Scrum, we have to have a big planning. We have a release, we have a feature, epics and everything. And how we are going to, there is a roadmap, And then how we are going to implement and what are the things is go. It is go as per the roadmap and we implement the feature and the release accordingly. But however, in Kanban, it's a continuous flow. And whatever it is coming, we have to. And what I found, my experience in Kanban, in my company, okay, there is a there are a lot of niche resources, particularly in the production where you have the networking and lot of different security related stuffs, and you have to shuffle at them. And sometimes you will have to take a decision that some of the column in the Kanban, because you don't have the resources. So you have to take a decision that let us limit the WIP and let us make use of the resources, okay, to the other place. So that kind of a flexibility Kanban provides in terms of when you are having a lot of restriction and you need to implement to take care of the flow-based system. So that's the way it is very important, okay, when to use Scrum and when to use Kanban. It is very critical for the success of the project. That's
Ravi, Vijay, do you mind if I take a few seconds to ask Ravi something? Do you mind?
Yeah, please, Karen.
Ravi, I thought about it. What you said is actually also in my mind to use Kanban for the DevOps, for the ops team, and Scrum to be used for the development team.
Yeah.
But this is causing for me one issue. This concept is a great concept and very suitable to do it, but causing me since you have only one backlog, and sometimes some of the bugs and the technical depths sometimes it return back to the development team to do it. How it's easy to differentiate between the items and in the backlog? Who is going to classify whether it will go into Scrum and it go to the Scrum cycle, or should it go to the Kanban cycle?
Okay. Yeah, even the Scrum, you will have a bug, okay? You have a spike, okay? Whatever there is a part of a new development is coming up, you are creating a story, okay, related to that. If something which you are part of a Scrum part of a development, let it be the part of it. You can manipulate in which required, and sometimes you will have to manipulate the, okay, what is required. You have to be delivered during the sprint, okay? So that depends upon, sometimes you will find the whatever the goal you have planned in the beginning of a Scrum, because of these restrictions, because of some development or some issues are coming up, you are missing some of the goal. So let it be there. So you will have to have, it didn't require whatever it is coming out of the Scrum, some part of the things will go into Kanban. Let it be part of a Scrum. Don't move any of the story or something like that. Okay, one set of a story or one kind of a type of a story will go into Kanban. Okay, you have to take a decision in the beginning what kind of a system you want to implement for this kind of a project. That's my takeaway. I think Vijay, you can able to clarify on this aspect.
So let me put it very simply. What is the release planning? The release planning is fixing your entry points, in the sense, for an example, like Gardner example I would like to give you. He can outrightly declare that in the morning 7 to 8, only engineers would be allowed. So what would be his release point at 8 o'clock, or by 8 o'clock, or by 9 o'clock? He or she might say that all the engineers would be released by 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Right? What he or she is doing is limiting the kind of people that is going through Garden, entry point. Now, similarly, when I say release planning, what I do, what is my intended outcome at the end of whatever time, I limit that. How do I limit that? Maybe if I'm making a website, my payment gateways would be ready. So what happens is, whenever there are entry points, so many requests are coming in, as Lakshmi said. In that case, in Kanban, what you can do is you can just prioritize it, or you can grade it. What is the grade? Maybe this grade is, oh, this requirement is coming in. Can we take it inside? No, because this is not coming into, say, a payment gateway grade now, or payment gateway type now. So give it less priority. On the backlog or service or product backlog, just give a less priority. And you can still say that this is typically a rate of inflow of this kind of requirements. So in a way, you can limit it, that yes, 10, 15 requirements of this kind of type, we would be able to do it by the end of this. Now, as I told you, Kanban can be implemented in all scenarios. So if your scenario is like your entry is absolutely bizarre, chaos, if it's chaos, you are in a chaos situation, in that case, you cannot have a release planning. So what you will have to do, you will have to keep your situation in the ordered manner. How do you order it? By categorizing your requirements. How do you categorize it? Based on your needs. That can be your release planning or flexi release planning. I cannot go into too much of details now. However, Scrum, when we say typically complex scenario, requirements are not often. You can stop your customers during the sprint time, no change. In that case, it's absolutely okay. But in Kanban, can you manage your flow? Yes, you can manage your flow. How do you manage? I mean, only this kind of requirements would flow into Kanban system. That's the way that you can manage. This is called as Kanban flow. Maybe I would like to have another session on Kanban. How do you manage it? Because this session would not answer all those questions. So Lotfi, does that answer in very macro level? You can
Yeah, thank you so much. Like what you said, Vijay, it's a very big subject. Maybe what I would recommend, this was the introduction. Maybe later we can break down, like, the feature, you break it down at user stories. Sure. Maybe I highly recommend, because I can see from the tone, the people how talking, they are so professional. So maybe we are looking for more advanced topics, What do you think? Sure. Maybe one day we will cover into how can we do capacity plan. Another one, how can we do substitute sprint planning in Kanban. I need more specific how the supply manager will do prioritization for the backlog item. All this stuff, actually, I'm sure you got my point, right? Thank you so much. It was really great.
Yeah, Vijay, I have a question. Vijay, I have a question. Yeah, basically this Scrum every organization follows Scrums nowadays, but it depends on the organization to organization. For example, for a particular project, there is a delivery which is planned together with 4 sprints. So each sprint might take 1 month or 15 days, and then all 4 sprints are completed along with testing, and then we will go with go live, and we will go with preparation of go live and do the go live release. But in case of Kanban, it is a continuous delivery. How it will be practically possible, since we come up with, when you start the project, initially project charter was prepared. Once the project document was signed off, and then project charter was prepared, and in that project charter we basically mention all the sprint details along with the go live tentative go live in and out with 1 week of difference. So if you opt the Kanban, how in real picture, how it will be suit for especially for IT deliveries, I'm asking.
Sure. So I would like to give you an example from one of my implementations. I was working with, as a coach with BNY.
Okay.
This was a team wherein I would not go into a lot of details because I cannot share the typical project details. It's very confidential information. So the way it was, like, tickets were coming in from the customers. Demand was high. The supply was less. In such a cases, how do we do releases? You can say as and when release, but what is the problem with as and when release? For an example, Apple implements Kanban very well. Apple implements Kanban and they do it really, really well. How do we do it? For an example, if you're creating Apple phones, And on Apple phones, you are releasing softwares. You are implementing Kanban. Now, you know something? You can fix a problem or add a requirement. Your software teams can create it. And they say we are done, absolutely tested. It goes into your pre-production environment. Pre-production environment, I'm saying you. Why they are putting into pre-production environment? They are ready. They say absolutely tested and everything. It is to be deployed on the customer environment. But can they do it? They can do it. They can deploy it in the customer environment. But what will happen? Customer like we iPhone users will complain every now and then you are sending a release. You know, that will irritate customers. And also one more thing on the customer side, the release cycle itself takes its own time, the resources and the energy. It is not released every now and then in such cases, if you are implementing Kanban in such cases. So then what you do is you limit your delivery. What you say, every 3 months, whatever is accumulated in my pipeline, I will just release it, plain and simple. Somebody has also asked a question on CI and CD that I see in Scrum.
Yes, Vijay, this is from my side. Hari Narayan, working in IBM.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So CI/CD can be implemented anywhere, whether it's Scrum or Kanban. But what is CI/CD? Typically a sequential process automation. Okay. CI/CD is nothing but automation of your current process. It is nothing more than that. I mean, this whole world has taken it like CI/CD is so blah 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 and kind of, it's nothing. It's just an automation and reducing human effort.
Vijay, as you told, like cycle time, lead time, elapsed time, that is with respect to Kanban, or it can be carried out to other Scrum Agile framework as well?
Cycle time can be implemented anywhere. However, if you actually see in Scrum, if you implement cycle time, what you will say, something started at the sprint start and finished at the sprint end. So typical cycle time was maybe how much? A sprint duration. But in Kanban, what will happen? You started today and you finish tomorrow. Over. You can just put it into pre-release or release wherever you want to release it because it's release ready. So in that case, the cycle time is reduced.
Okay. One more question. So one more thing, like see that some SLA based tickets are there, right? Production tickets. So that can be easily handled through Kanban, right?
Yes. If you have SLA based system, and if your SLA is very short,
right.
You have a sprint length of 15 days, but your SLA is 5 days, you just cannot implement it. But in the given new Scrum situation, that if you want to release it in between, then you can release it. But Kanban allows anytime you can release it. Okay. So let me finish today's scope first, then I'll go into questions. So events, what are the events we have? We have in Scrum, sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, and retrospective. In Kanban, we have replenishment meeting because we do not have a big bang sprint planning meeting. What we do, whenever in our backlog, we need some more items or backlog items or requirements, what do we go? The container is empty. Okay, let's go and discuss about it and then pull more items. Like Lotfi said, So whatever is for this release, let me just put it. Let me pick and choose. I will not choose anything which is not relevant for my release. That's it. So that is called as replenishment meeting. Daily Kanban meeting, just like daily Scrum. The only difference is you stand in front of your Kanban board, as I showed you with WIP limit. You also find out what are the bottlenecks and you solve it. That is a daily Kanban meeting. How much time? Typically, that is also about 15 minutes. Who all? Everyone in the team. Then flow review. How is the flow review? How's the speed of things? How's the throughput? All these matrices, we just review it. That typically happens by maybe monthly, or maybe sometimes people have mid of the month or something like that. So it depends how often you can. And then there is a risk management review at the bigger team level. While in Scrumban, you can have typical Scrum, and apart from that, when you're doing daily Scrum, you can also have Kanban wise, your board can be Kanban based, and you can just take care of those factors from Kanban in your daily scrums. So that would be mix of both. So that's how matrices looks like. Where to use it? Where to use Scrum? We have already discussed complex projects. Kanban, wherever there is a knowledge discovery, anywhere is knowledge dependent, you can implement it. And typically Scrumban is mix of both, like typically complex projects plus defect fixing or maintenance projects. So you have to give at the end of the sprint something and in between also something. So that's a mix of it. Where not to use? If we are implementing Scrum, where not to use it? If it is not the complex scenario, it is like very simple scenario, like everyday defect comes and you deliver it. No benefit. Why do you meet when there is no collaboration required? When every developer is doing their own work, there's no collaboration required. No use. It would be waste of time. If your organization is not ready to implement all the Scrum Master, product owner, and all this in entirety, it might be a waste. If your customer is not ready to be available for your reviews at the end of the sprint, say no, we are not ready or something. The collaboration is not, the customer is not ready to collaborate. No use. Okay, that would be really, really tough. Kanban, where not to implement. If at all you are not ready or you are not good at analyzing matrices. However, analyzing is very, very simple here. But if you are not ready for that and continuous improvement, then there's no point. Because what Kanban says, start your Kanban implementation from zero. The way you are there, no role change, nothing, no trainings or something like that. Just need to put your workflow in right manner. So demand and supply management. If you're not going to do that analysis, forget. Don't do it. Whatever you want to implement, because that's a chaos situation. What are the tools that we typically use? Tools generally burn up or burn down charts in Scrum. But in Kanban, if you see the visual tool is CFD, Cumulative Flow Diagram. What is Cumulative Flow Diagram? If you draw a burn-up chart for every state, like to do, development, testing, deployment, every single factor or how many tickets are there on a given date in that particular column or phase, you have to just cumulatively add it, and that shows a burn up of various stages. So what is CFD? CFD is burn up, above burn up, above burn up, above burn up of cumulative additions of tickets. So that is CFD. It gives you lots of information about where is the bottleneck, how is the speed of delivery. There's something called as Little's law. If you apply that Little's law, any point of time you get to know what was your capacity of your system and what efficiency you are delivering. So I'm saying again, Kanban is more metrics oriented or visibility oriented framework. If you're not ready to do that, understand how the speed is going and something like that, it is not as simple matrices as Scrum. Kanban is more in-depth, but I have done a lot of implementation of Scrum as well as Kanban. Kanban, I have seen 2 months, I have seen about 20% improvement, 30% improvement, very fast, because we do not train people. We do not do a lot of things or something like that. We just tell them what is the mentality, how to operate your work. Okay, no big bang trainings like Scrum Master, Product Owner, this is how you do it or something like that. So Kanban is that's really, really easy, but it's metrics-driven framework or metrics-driven method or methodology. So that's why CFD is very, very important tool here to be used. What is it to CFD? Is you can call it as burn-up of burn-ups, multiple burn-ups. Okay, so that's how you get all the informations there. Yeah. Now about, if you ask me about, people ask me this last question generally, what are the certifications? So if you actually go in market as of date, today, if you say there are about 270 plus certifications for any Scrum, like different role-wise, or also agile coaching and so many things, or a product owner, Scrum Master, dev team. That was, there are multiple organizations for different certifications. As of dates, there are 270 plus certifications available and active. But in Kanban, roughly get around 10 certifications. Majority of the times, the premium organization, that is Lean Kanban University, LKU gives you TKP, KMP1, KMP2. And then there are many Kanban Foundation, Kick, and there are 2-3 different organizations. Scrum.org also started nowadays the Scrum and Kanban. I think PSK is the certification. Professional Scrum Kanban kind of, So this is how, so now Kanban is growing. So Kanban's application is in all the sectors. Anywhere it can be implemented, but Scrum should be implemented to get the better outcome in the complex scenario. You were asking about what is a reference for Kanban, right?
Yes. What is there any best practice or a standard available in the market, like Scrum Guide or Pinbook or Prince2 standard, safe best practice? Is there anything, or only this individual like David Anderson, these books available in the market? There is tons of books. I already have tons of books. Is there any specific standard you recommend, or only a certain author book? And what is the best certification you, as a professional, you believe it is really very recognized, very respected in the market? Thank you so much.
Sure. So there's a book written by Mr. David Anderson, Kanban, plain simple Kanban. It's a very small book. It has everything what you actually need under the sky. However, there are different versions of Kanban, and there is no specific black book or something like that for Kanban as of date. And the highest level of certifications are mostly done or recognized is by Lean Kanban University. That is Team Kanban Practitioners, KMP1 and KMP2. That we do various people, and I have also certified certain CEOs and CTOs on the KMP1 and KMP2. So I see most recognized, I would see KMP1 and KMP2 and TKP. However, other certifications I'm not aware of much. I'm actually organization. We generally give you an exam to write or something like that. So that's sometimes really tough, very scenario specific in your